An insane part of the town's high school curriculum was about to begin, and our protagonist, Jirou Yakuin, was just hoping that luck favored him for this one time in his life. Jirou was an introverted third-year student, and his school had a special assignment where they divided male and female students into pairs living under one roof. The pairs had to act as if they were a married couple, and were going to be graded according to how well they got along. Jirou was kind of a loser in life who barely had a couple of friends, and he was hoping to be paired with his childhood friend and crush, Sakurazaka Shirori, but fate seemed to have other plans. Jirou gets paired with a lively girl named Akari Watanabe, and right off the bat, the couple had a terrible start. Akari wanted to be paired with her crush, Minami Tenji, and after being stuck with a loser like Jirou, she starts being mean to him that eventually leads to them losing points. The pair had to try harder to get along, but things were not so easy for someone like Jirou, especially when he found out that his crush Shirori had gotten paired with Minami, and they were getting along just fine. Jirou gets back home from his little trip, and as he was sulking about Shirori, Akari comforts her fake husband and manages to cheer him up. A week passes by, but the pair isn't able to progress too much. Jirou's homeroom teacher sits him down and tells him how he needs to try harder if he wishes to pass the final exams. Later on the same day, as Jirou was about to leave school, it starts raining outside, and seeing Akari still interested to go and join Minami for some karaoke almost kills Jirou's last hopes for any romantic development, even in a fake relationship. With no umbrella to use for himself, Jirou was wondering if he should really bother Akari when it turns out that she was waiting for him right outside the building the whole time she was talking to Shiori. Akari reluctantly shares her umbrella with Jirou, and the two do make it back home. Akari feels like making some improvements, so after getting back home, she cooks some nice food for Jirou. At dinner, Jirou musters up some courage to act more lovingly with Akari as well, and even though on the surface both were just pretending, later on it seems like neither of them didn't really dislike the moment they shared earlier at the dinner table. Later on, during the same night, Jirou is dreaming about having Shiori as his wife, when Akari wakes him up and asks him to spend some time together. Akari wanted to watch a horror movie together so they can gain some points, and she even gets the two some matching pajamas to wear for the night. During the movie session, a rainstorm hits the area and the electricity gets cut off. The two weren't able to return to their own rooms as they were fingerprint operated, so they had to spend the rest of the time together on the couch. Akari was scared of the lightning and Jirou's stupid horror stories, so she starts leaning on him. Jirou's feelings get the best of him in the heat of the moment, and he calls Akari cute. The gesture is appreciated by Akari as well, and Jirou is man enough to let her hold him as she falls asleep. The night passes by just like that, and even though neither of them had planned any of this, it worked flawlessly in the end for both of them. Jirou was amazed upon seeing so much progress after last night, but after seeing Shiori and Minami still at E rank, Jirou starts to wonder whether Shiori is doing alright or not. The guy kept worrying about Shiori even when he got back home, and in the process, he got himself drenched. The dude gets sick, and with Akari out with her friends, he had no one to nurse him. Jirou was dreaming about how nice it would be if Shiori was here, when the bell rings and he actually finds Shiori outside, waiting with some medication. Shiori starts helping Jirou out, and she tells him about how Akari was the one who told her to visit him. This gets Jirou a little conflicted between the two girls, and after Shiori feeds him some food, he starts regretting the time he chickened out in his confession back in middle school. Jirou falls asleep after his meal, and while he was out, it turns out that Jirou's crush wasn't one-sided, and that Shiori still is interested in him as well. Elsewhere, Akari was having fun with her friends when she was told about how she might lose Jirou if his interest keeps leaning towards Shiori. Akari didn't like how that sounded, but later on, Jirou relieves her anxiety by thanking her for being considerate of him while he was sick. On the same night, Akari was with Jirou as he was eating some food when she shows interest in getting to know about things that guys like. Akari was asking specifically for Jirou, but this dummy isn't able to take a hint and starts sharing generic things with her. Jirou mentions that pretty much any guy would appreciate some nice food, and Akari likes the suggestion enough that she later cooks a meal for him. She also gave Jirou a home-cooked lunch for school. Later, Jirou was eating with his friend Kamo during lunch break, and Kamo starts getting envious of Jirou's life. The friends were talking about how this married life is for Jirou when Akari joins them to ask about the food. The conversation turns into a lover's quarrel, and Kamo starts wondering what did he ever do wrong in life for not getting the same treatment. Afterwards, Akari starts putting more effort into herself and her cooking for Jirou, and our guy really appreciates it, until he remembers that Akari is actually into Minami and not him. This creates a weird tension between the two, and around the same time, Shiori visits their place. Shiori had brought some of her own home-cooked sweets, and after coming to know that Jirou specifically requested Shiori for these, Akari gets disappointed in herself. Jirou tries to cheer her up by telling her about her qualities, but he blunders there as well since he couldn't think of anything other than the way she looks. Akari tries harder to make this marriage situation work better for both of them, but Jirou ends up acting like a coward again. This event breaks the couple and they start avoiding each other to the point that they lose all of their earned scores. On the other hand, Minami and Shiori had started something going and they already made it to rank A. Shiroi notices Jirou's sad state and she confronts him about his relationship with Akari. Shiori encourages Jirou just enough that he decides to make things right and have a one-on-one conversation with Akari. The bro visits her room and desperately tries to convince her to give the married arrangement another go. Some tension starts to build up when Akari blurts out that she likes Jirou quite a bit, but she immediately plays it off as a prank, and Jirou embarrasses himself at the end again. Despite being at 0 points at the moment, the pair agrees to patch up and looks forward to some romantic progress from here on out. Sometime later, in PE class, while everyone else was having fun, Jirou was sitting in a corner with Kamo, wondering about just how much of a background character he is when compared to someone like Minami. A rumor had been going around about how Minami might not change partners despite reaching A rank, and this gets Jirou thinking. Even though at first Jirou was thinking about what he would do if he had to choose between Akari and Shiori, but after seeing Minami's charm, he starts to wonder that realistically, he will never have a chance in front of someone as good as Minami. After class is wrapped up, Jirou runs into Shiori outside the gym, and he tries to confirm the rumor from earlier with her. Akari also runs into Minami in the storage room, and she asks him about the same thing. Minami tilts towards staying with Shiori and Akari starts shedding tears after hearing this, as she genuinely was interested in Minami. Minami is just trying to wipe her tears when Kamo sees the two and a new controversy begins. Kamo tries to run straight to Jirou, but he isn't able to say anything due to the awkward environment. Later on in class, when Jirou was wondering about Akari's behavior, Kamo pulls up on him and reveals how he found Minami possibly kissing Akari. Even though Jirou wanted to originally go after Shiori, this completely breaks his heart, and he heads back home totally depressed. The dude was certain that he was just an NPC in Minami's story, but he decides to confirm the news with Akari before jumping to conclusions. Jirou asks Akari whether she kissed Minami or not, and at first she just tries to laugh it off. Akari starts crying in the end, while sort of explaining her feelings, and our dude gives her a hug to comfort her. The hug had made things a lot better between the two, and even though Jirou was still sure that he was a loser compared to Minami, the rather wifey treatment from Akari still brought him a lot of joy. Days went by pretty quickly. The pair was getting along well enough. Jirou was seemingly leaning towards Akari by now, but after making it to school, he finds Shiori helping out in class, and that makes our guy conflicted between the girls again. At school, both Shiori and Akari were hanging out with their own friends when they were asked whether they were interested in Jirou or not. Both girls gave rather similarly embarrassed answers, and later in class, Jirou finds himself with Shiori alone for class duty. Shiori had swapped shifts with her friend Mei, and she managed to spend some nice alone time with Jirou while they were getting things done. This arrangement is seen by Akari, who, for some reason, prefers not to look at Jirou while with any other girl. Jirou didn't really do anything decisive at the end of class duty either, and while he was thinking about the whole day back home, Akari treats him with a warm drink. The couple is watching the starry night together while joking around when Akari asks Jirou to call her by her first name too, as she was feeling awkward about calling Jirou by his first name alone. Akari makes fun of Jirou's general lack of confidence around girls until he goes ahead and does as she says. After Jirou calls her by her name, Akari just runs back blushing, leaving our already confused guy even more unsure of his feelings. On the next day at school, the teacher announces how the class will be going through some special tests, and this leaves Jirou in a bad spot as the scores were combined and he had no idea how good Akari was at studying. After school, Akari was running off to some karaoke when Jirou stopped her and asked her about her preparation. Akari was in the mood of just winging the test, so Jirou takes charge and actually tells Akari to come home with him. At their place, Jirou realizes that Akari wholeheartedly hates studying, but they still manage to solve some problems in the end with some combined effort. Once again, Jirou was having a hard time being around women as usual, and just when he tries to be more confident, his nosebleed ruins everything. After treating Jirou's nosebleed, the two start getting some of their laundry done when Akari mentions how Jirou is only trying this hard due to his wish to be paired with Shiori. The same thing was bothering Akari throughout the day, but when Jirou reassures her that he was just trying to help her in academics, Akari starts catching feelings for him even more and wonders about whether she wants to change pairs even after having the option or not. On another usual morning, Jirou was going through his everyday morning routine when he happens to feel that something is off. Akari was calling our guy Yakuin instead of Jirou, and that seemed to bother him since every single one of her other actions was just normal. At school, Jirou kept looking for answers, and after not coming to a conclusion, the guy even goes as far as asking Kamo about it. The school time ends with Jirou caught up in his mind, and back home, when Akari reveals how they managed to not only pass, but to get to the 8th spot in the special test, Jirou figures that he should do something about this behavior. Jirou calls Akari by her first name and somehow hits the bullseye. This was exactly what she wanted, and even though this marriage practically was about to be over, these two were not sure if they wanted to let go of each other or not. On the next day, we get to Mei as she was with Shiori, and she asks her if she is really interested in Jirou or not. Mei wanted Shiori to do something if she didn't want to lose Jirou to Akari, but while she was getting embarrassed for no reason again, a football hit her in the face. Shiori was sent to the infirmary, and Mei reached out to Jirou so she could make an arrangement. Jirou was reluctant at first, and after Mei somehow convinced him to go, she started wondering why Shiori is head over heels for such a wimp. Jirou met up with Shiori in the infirmary, and still, things didn't really progress at all, just like usual. The pair was equally nervous to make a move, and just when they tried to do something, Akari's friend runs into the infirmary and destroys the moment. Both Jirou and Shiori decided to call it a day, and in the meanwhile elsewhere in the school, Akari was getting anxious about why Jirou is not contacting her. After a good few texts, the same friend came up and revealed how she saw a guy and girl in the infirmary. Around the same time, Jirou texts her about him being in the infirmary with Shiori, and the possibility of Jirou being the one her friend mentioned makes Akari really sad. Akari wasn't in the mood of talking, so she runs off to cool her head in a coffee shop before going home. As Akari reaches the main door, she was nervous about finding Jirou with Shiori in there. She musters up the courage to open the door and finds Jirou sleeping on the couch while waiting for her. Seeing Jirou was a big relief for her, and she decides to share the couch with him for the night. Jirou wakes up the next day, and he still gets surprised to find Akari sleeping with him even after all this time. Akari makes fun of Jirou like she usually does, but then she seemingly starts complaining about Jirou's interest in Shiori, making this already complicated love triangle even harder to sort out. At school, as soon as lunch break started, Jirou ran straight to the roof to play a video game with Kamo. Kamo finds such desperation weird and wonders if Jirou got into a fight with his wife again. Elsewhere in the school, Shiori was having a hard time taking out the trash when Akari's friends Sachi and Natsumi offered to help her out. The trash was a bit too much, so Sachi calls the loner duo for help, and in the process, both girls notice the way Shiori acts around Jirou. Since only Jirou wasn't able to take the hint after all these years, the girls go to Akari and ask her if she has felt anything towards her cowardly husband in all this time. Akari's expression gave away her uncertainty, but the girls still reassure Akari that they would help her out with Minami. With the firework festival about to start, Akari was getting ready to just meet with Minami at the festival, and Jirou was helping her out with her dress. This whole game of pretending had made everyone unsure at this point, and neither Jirou nor Akari were able to decide who they really wanted to date. Akari heads out for the festival anyways, and while she was looking forward to meeting Minami, his friends revealed that he had already left the festival due to his work. Akari gets disappointed since she had done all this work for Minami, and to cool off, she heads to have a look around. Akari is again unable to decide between Jirou and Minami, when suddenly she finds Minami walking with Shiori, and the mere realization of the truth left her brutally devastated. It turns out that Minami was actually just heading for his workplace, but at this point, the damage had already been dealt to Akari. Back at the apartment, Jirou was wondering about Akari having fun when the recent interactions led him to compare himself with Minami again. The guy is caught up in his head when he receives a call from Akari and she apologizes to him while crying over the phone. Jirou panics and runs out to look for her, only to find her right outside the door. Instead of questioning her, Jirou wipes Akari's tears and welcomes her home with open arms. The fireworks had started, so the couple chose to just watch it from their very own balcony. The pair start going back and forth like usual, and this time Jirou doesn't deny feeling jealous of Minami. Akari sees some hope in this answer, and she lets Jirou tie her yukata again to show compassion. While Jirou is tying the yukata, he helps Akari out in regaining her self-confidence, and the pair spend the rest of the festival time watching their first and probably the last fireworks together. This never-ending confusion in Jirou's love triangle brings us to the end of today's recap. Thank you for sticking till the end, and let us know in the comments if you guys want a second part of the series. Don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.